What else are you going to do in your life that measures up to what you did in that uniform? That's the hard part in transition. Because a value is not real unless it costs you something, unless you have to sacrifice something for it, unless you give something up for it, or unless you gain something for it. Otherwise, it's just a word we use. So the biggest question we can reflect on in this piece of the values exercise is, what am I willing to lose to keep this value? What am I willing to lose to keep this value? How much time are you willing to put in when no one's watching, with no guarantee that it's going to bear fruit? And what if all of that work yields great results for someone else? That's why it's so hard to be great.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back. This is part 2 of my conversation with the one and only Johnny Martin on episode 44 of the Next Season podcast. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, go back and start there. We're going to jump right in. In this half of the conversation, we're going to continue talking about transition and identity and the mindset that separates people who move forward from people who stay stuck. And then Johnny's going to lead us through a live values exercise. It's a live step-by-step framework, what values really are, how to test whether yours are real, and the one question that most people never ask themselves. So stay tuned for that. So again, if you're a coach, if you're an athlete, if you're an Atlas athlete, don't miss this. This is a masterclass. Get your notebooks ready. Here we go. I hear it goes back to what we're consuming a little bit in some ways, because you think about food, right? If you want to get healthy, it's not about, okay, we're just going to go through the pantry and the fridge and we're going to throw away everything. Okay, you can do that, but is that going to be sustainable, right?
Not for most.
Right? But if you start to fill your fridge and your pantry with real foods, right? There's not going to be room for that fake stuff, the highly processed stuff. If you start to fill your life with real relationships, real conversations, there's not going to be as much room. So it's not about eliminating so much as prioritizing what's real. And so instead of having an artificial relationship, a fake relationship through electronics, through social media, prioritizing the real, authentic relationships, not the highly processed relationships.
Yeah, it's also a great practice and discipline too. So rather than eliminating everything, how do we exist in a world where these things exist? And then how do we set left and right limits for how much of that we're going to consume? If we go all the way back to the transition discussion, right? One of the 3 things that I talk about all the time in transition with people is, what are you consuming? Right? It's not about that. It's not about don't consume it. I scroll on Instagram. I jump on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right? What are we consuming and why? And if we say that these things matter most, well, why wouldn't we want to consume things that are going to help us get closer to that thing that we says matter most? In any other area of our life, these things are so simple, but we take them for granted when it comes to our own growth. Here's an example. If the light on your car if the light flashes E, what do?
You fill it up.
We go get gas.
You fill it up. Yeah.
We go get gas, right? If there's a million different examples in our own lives that we can point to. There's also a million examples that we see in people every day that we would immediately swoop in and provide advice or counsel or help, right? But we would pull over in a second. Most of us pull over in a second if we saw somebody struggling along the side of the road and they were trying to put a new tire on their car. If we knew what we were doing, we would probably stop and give them a hand. But in our own mind, in our own mindset and preparation and growth, we drive around with a flat tire for weeks, months, years, and don't do anything to fix it.
Yeah. Well, in the population you work with, I think about this a lot. The population you work with, and I work and have worked with some veterans too. Certainly not the same way. They have incredible discipline when they get back from a mission. Right? They're exhausted. They're starving. They're thirsty. They're dirty. Right? They haven't slept, and the first thing to do is break down and clean their weapon. Right? But they won't do that same thing physically. They're downrange. They're in a close quarter combat situation. They're downrange in a tight spot. Incredible target discipline to only take shot and like that quick, being able to make life or death decisions on whether they're pulling the trigger or not, but not have that same discipline to pause and catch themselves in a critical moment before they say something or do something that they shouldn't. So they have that discipline. Are they practicing it?
Well, it's a different, it's like anything else. It's a different environment, right? And so using your example, which is 100% accurate, one of the things we can't discount is the hundreds of thousands of reps that they've practiced to be the best in the world at what they do. When the United States military is preparing their men and women to do a certain job, they do it better than anybody in the world. The military's role and responsibility isn't necessarily, and you can debate this and argue this, but isn't necessarily to prepare them for this unbelievable transition that occurs for them, whether they've been in war or not. It's a completely different environment to wear a uniform for 4, 8, 12, 25 years than it is to get up every day and be Johnny Civilian or Kevin Civilian like you and I are. It's completely different. There's a whole different language. There's a different set of expectations. There's a different set of left and right limits. And so while one thing is true is that they're the best in the world at what they do, that fall that comes with transition and identity is, in my experience, I can only speak for myself, the only cohort of folks I've ever worked with that the transition experiences mirror each other are professional athletes or high level college athletes. It's the only two groups that I've worked with where the transition can be that impactful and detrimental because of the amount of time they've spent honing their craft. And there's nothing else in their world or in our world that is going to compare to what they were able to do in that uniform. Whether that uniform was the United States Army or whether that uniform was Kansas City Chiefs. What else are you going to do in your life that measures up to what you did in that uniform? That's the hard part in transition.
Yeah. And that's why high performing athletes, Olympic athletes, professional athletes, even high performing collegiate athletes, one of the very few populations that they're going to admire and respect to listen to and get inspired by are top tier military. That's
because there's a reason companies all over the world bring in SEALs and Rangers and Green Berets to speak to their people. I'm one of the lucky ones, man. I get to work with these folks every day, and I only hope I've given as much to them as they've given to me.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset. It's a different and it's not any one of us can adapt it. Or can adopt it or adopt pieces of it. Any one of us have the ability to do it, but the amount of discipline and resolve required to do so, most people when met with the adversity that these men and women are met with, most people are not going to continue moving forward. Most, right? I would even throw myself in that same category. I don't know that I have what would be required to do what these men and women have done day in and day out, year in and year out. I don't know that I have it. I'm probably closer to it as I've gotten older from a mindset perspective. And now the problem is my body would never make it. Right. So there's this beautiful mixture of being so smart, so adaptable, so resilient, and also being really fit and able to get through what some of these qualification courses entail.
Going back to an earlier word, though, is authenticity and alignment. And that is, you probably earn more respect from the folks that you work with because you are real and acknowledge, look, over the last 10, 15, 20 years of doing this work, I've probably got more of the mindset that if my physical body at age 20, if I had the combination of my body at 20 and my mind at 50, maybe, who knows, if the desire was there.
Yeah. Well, that's the other piece too. You nailed it. Is a lot of folks, I don't know, because I've never been there, but just in talking with hundreds and hundreds of these folks, especially from elite level communities, it's almost like they didn't choose it. It chose them. Yeah. It's a whole different breed of I mean, mindset is the separator. It just is that if you take, you and I, right? And we're both fit people at 25, 26 years old. It's not like athletics, right? In all ways. And when I say that, I mean, to make it to that level of athletics, which would be professional, and it wouldn't be farm system. It would be in your world, in the baseball world, it would be MLB, right? You have to have a massive amount of talent plus all of the other things. The world I work in is a little bit different. I've met tons of guys that from a talent perspective, they were never the star athlete. Some were, but some were never the star athlete, never the team captain, never. I was just talking with a guy yesterday, man. Barely graduated high school, never made a varsity sport, was always told and his belief was, I can only do certain things because I'm not that smart and I'm not that athletic. And so when he barely graduated high school, his first stop was the recruiting station. Ended up spending his entire career in the special operations community.
Underdog mentality.
Yeah, and put into environments where he got a chance to challenge those limiting beliefs. They weren't set for him. He got a chance to decide whether or not he was going to subscribe to that ideology, because in that environment, man, if you do good work, you're going to get recognized for it.
So let's go there. Let's dig deeper there for a couple minutes, Johnny, because you've got we use this 20 to 50, right? If we can get our mindset into a person at age 20, right, that is, they physically have talent in whatever arena they're playing in. And also we've got a 30, 40-year-old that's realizing, okay, I had the talent and I had I had this career in sports, or I had this career in the military, and now it's figuring out what's next. Do I have the mindset? So we're trying to get the mindset and the wisdom and the grit and the discipline into the 20-year-old, realizing, okay, utilize both. We need mindset and talent. And then from the transitioning, you had the physical gifts. Now, what are you going to do next? There's a values exercise. One of the biggest things I took from you and learned from you for years in our conversations is around values and the importance of values and what you call your no matter what's. One of the biggest things I took from you. But let's take a 20-year-old, that can feel a little bit abstract.
Yeah, 100%.
I can feel like, okay, so I'm 20-year-old Kevin. I'm coming to you. You're saying, hey, we're going to do a values exercise. And I say, Johnny, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. What do we do?
Fair point. Let me walk you through one sort of in preparation for this call, but also that I think about a lot with younger folks. But this is even applicable for the person that's transitioning from a career, maybe retiring, as we talk about from the military, really any form of transition. The first mistake that we make a lot of times as coaches, and then also folks that are trying to live in a way that is aligned with their values, is we try to touch them all the time, right? So for this young guy that you're talking about, that you'd be working with, or that may be listening, I want you to think about, begin with the end in mind, and it'll make sense when I walk you through this exercise. But as we talk about all this stuff, I want you just to think about just one thing that you're going to work on for 1 week. Okay. So when I share this exercise with you, I want you to think about one piece for 1 week. Everything else remains the same. Your training protocol, your diet, your sleep, your academics, your job, whatever it is. As it relates to this exercise, you're going to think about one thing for 1 week. That's it. So to take you back, when we talk about values, real values, they have to check 3 boxes. They have to be clear, they have to be tested, and they have to be behavioral. What do I mean by behavioral? They have to be actionable. They have to result in a change of behavior or a consistent choice around behavior when those values are tested. So values have to be clear. They can't be arbitrary. They can't be centered around feelings. They have to be clear. They have to be tested, and they have to be behavioral. So let's just keep that in mind when we walk through this exercise. First one is really simple. Pick 5 things that you say matter most. Okay, that's step 1. pick 5 things that you say matter most.
Family,
show up
faith, education,
that show
baseball.
up in your life consistency. So here are some examples that I've written down: discipline, growth, family, service, and maybe fun. Maybe that 20-year-old still wants to embed some fun into their journey so they don't burn out and end up hating everyone and everything, right?
Yeah.
So pick 5. That's step 1. Just pick 5 that show up in your life pretty consistently. Step number 2 is to take one of those values, just one, translate that value into a behavior. I'll give you an example. So step 2 is you're going to take the value, you're going to translate it into a behavior. Okay. Let's take the discipline piece. Very simple I statement. I do what needs to be done even when I don't feel like it. I do what needs to be done even when I don't feel like it. We've taken the value that we've identified in step 1. We've turned that value into behavior in step 2. And the one we chose for now is discipline. I do what needs to be done even when I don't feel like it. Step 3 is what we call an audit, a values audit. This is definitely hands down the most challenging for me and many of the clients that I work with. Okay. Because we have to audit these things that we say matter most. And there are really three questions that can help us audit it if we answer them honestly. Okay. The first one is, when did I last prove this under pressure? That's the first question. When did I last prove this under pressure? So for this kid that we're talking about, Kev, I do what needs to be done even when I don't want to. Well, my workouts for this week had to be adjusted. The only time that I was able to train today was 5:00 this morning. When my alarm went off, it's very clear. I either got up and went to train or I didn't. Another example for the 20-year-old kid is, I promised myself for the next 8 weeks of training, I'm not going to drink at all. To interfere with my training, I feel like shit when I get up in the morning. I'm not going to drink at all, right? When did I last prove this under pressure? So it's measurable for this kid. That's question 1. Question 2, when did I violate it? We can't go back and say this values-based stuff isn't working for me if we are violating the things that we say matter most. That's why I said this audit step is the most challenging, because it introduces us to ourselves. It's where most human beings, myself for sure, fall short, right? And then the third question is, what did I choose instead? The reason that that's important is because maybe what you say matters most doesn't. And maybe you're saying all of those things to appease your parents or your coaches or your teachers or your girlfriend or society or whatever you think you're supposed to be measuring up to. So again, real quick, those 3 questions. When did I last prove this under pressure? When did I violate it? And what did I choose instead? So just to backtrack, step 1, identify those 5 values. Step 2, translate them into behavior. Step 3, audit. Okay. Couple more steps. Step 4 is around cost. Here's what I mean by that. You and I talk all the time about value, not values. We talk all the time about value. So this 4th piece is around cost. Because a value is not real unless it costs you something, unless you have to sacrifice something for it, unless you give something up for it, or unless you gain something for it. Otherwise, it's just a word we use. But there has to be a cost, some sort of cost. Don't think about the cost fiscally, although it may be, but there are plenty of other costs, right? So the biggest question that we can reflect on in this piece of the values exercise is, what am I willing to lose to keep this value? What am I willing to lose to keep this value? Am I willing to give up time? Am I willing to give up money? Am I willing to give up approval? Am I willing to give up attention? Am I willing to give up a relationship? I'm not the one who will ever tell anybody what is right or wrong. People are the experts on themselves. But you and I are talking about, and the question was centered around a values exercise for a 20-year-old, right? So what are you willing to give up to hold on to that value? You have to be able to be willing to sacrifice something. Otherwise, it's not a value. It has to cost you something.
Mhm.
Why? Because if it matters most, I promise you it's going to be tested every day. It'll be tested every day. So what am I willing to give up? It's like the guy who says, the next job I take, I want it to be connected with my passion, and I don't care what the job pays. The only people who say that shit are the ones that have enough money to live already. I get to do work I love every single day. The work also provides me an opportunity to do some pro bono work. But you can bet your ass I care what it pays. So we have to be honest when we do a values exercise and when we do a values assessment. Otherwise, they're just words, right? And then the last piece around this is, are you willing to strip away recognition? Meaning, how much can you really work, struggle, suffer, and achieve in silence? Or how much can you work, struggle, achieve, and possibly have all the recognition go to someone else? Very common in business, right? I work with leaders in business all the time. Upper level management, middle management. I work with them all the time. And I've heard, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, I have done the lion's share of this work for the last 3 months to get a project to the finish line, to watch my boss stand in front of the group and just talk about how awesome it is that he or she has accomplished this. Tough shit.
Yeah.
They're the boss. And I ask my clients all the time, okay, but the product that you're designing, it's not for the boss, is it? No. Well, who's it for? Whoever it's for. And I said, what about this work is so important to you? Well, I love that I get to do this and that and this. Okay, what don't you like? Well, I don't like this or this. Well, it sounds like the cost that you're paying is you're not getting the credit for the work that you're doing. Well, yeah, that's how I feel. Well, are you getting paid? Well, yeah, of course I'm getting paid. Sounds like you are getting credit for the work that you're doing.
Mhm.
Right? That mindset, that shift, that perspective around, and I would share with the 20-year-old athlete the same thing. Like, how much time are you willing to put in when no one's watching, with no guarantee that it's going to bear fruit? And what if all of that work yields great results for someone else? That's why it's so hard to be great, because you give up so much.
Yep.
And again, I would just circle back and say, just pick one value. So at the top of the exercise, I said, list 5. Well, yeah, list 5, but test this exercise with just one for 1 week. Pay attention to what happens. And then maybe the following week, you pick a different one. And then every 5 weeks, you keep revisiting them. It's an exercise that can exist in perpetuity.
Do values change? Can values change?
1,000%. We change. People ask me that question all the time. We change. Are you the same dude you were 6 months or a year ago?
Not 6 hours ago, sometimes.
So absolutely, I think it's critically important people revisit their values often. People ask me, well, what's a great time frame? I don't know. Some folks do it every 6 months. Some folks every year. Some folks notice a shift in what matters most to them, right? Their behaviors are indicative of a shift in their choice or how they're living their life. So maybe that's a good time to revisit your values. We do it oftentimes when folks are transitioning or in retirement, because so many of their values were picked for them, right? There are indoctrinated, centuries old values within the ethos of the military. So many of their values, their professional values, that of course are going to bleed into their personal lives, they're picked for you. And many of them are amazing and they're beautiful and they're values you want to hang on to for the rest of your life. But when you have agency over that choice, when you've retired now and you don't wear the uniform and you get to choose, would they be the same? I don't know. It's different for everybody, but yes, they change. They're allowed to change. You should revisit them often. And your lifestyle, the choices you're making every day, will be a really good indicator of the things that truly matter most, not what you say matters most.
And when someone's behavior doesn't align to their values, you can either take that as a moment of you had a moment, or it's a good time to evaluate what matters most.
Yeah, and it gives you a great opportunity to choose. Do I work to change the behavior, or do I work to revisit my values? Right? As coaches, our job isn't to judge. That's not our job. Our job is not to judge. Our job is to bring to light things that our clients, our athletes, our leaders might be missing as they go, right? We have blind spots. That's why you asked me earlier, mentor, podcast, or book. Right now in my life, in the season I'm in my life and my growth as husband, father, leader within my organization, there's lots of blind spots, right? I get tunnel vision sometimes. And a book or a podcast isn't necessarily going to help me identify that, but another human in real time as we talk through scenarios is going to help me identify those blind spots, right? And so neither is right or wrong in the way of the example you just gave, right? If my behaviors are not aligning with my values, it just gives us an opportunity to ask a really important question. Would I like my behavior to change, or am I okay with it? Do I need to revisit my values? It's not our job as a coach to judge and say, man, that was a shitty thing you did, right? You need to change that behavior. Or that was a great thing you did. Got to revisit your values. It gives us a chance to ask the question, what is more important right now? Revisiting your values or changing the behavior?
Mm-hmm. Johnny, you're a legend, man. You're a legend.
No, not at all. Doing the same thing you're doing, man. Just trying to grow and get better every day.
Right. So it's all we can do. I think we're going to have you back for a part 3, because where I want to go. So this was a masterclass, guys, in values and perspective. And I'm going to go back, take notes. If you didn't have your notebook ready, you're missing out, because I got ample notes right here.
Dude, I'll come back anytime, man. Your family. I love this stuff.
And I appreciate that. You know, you say that, but I don't take that lightly. So I'm going to hold you to it. We're going to have you back, because I want to talk more about identity. We talked about values, right? We hit that. That was gold. I want to talk about identity. I want to talk more about transition too, because that's your lane. You're a masterclass in that. But I also want to talk about identity and kind of transition for anybody that's going through identifying. You know, we call it next season. It's not just for baseball players. So it is truly next
It's
season.
an appropriate, man, I'll tell you, it's an appropriate title for the podcast and the business. Our life is literally made up of seasons.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I'm psyched to talk about and want to dig in specifically to the transition piece, because it's applicable for any human being, right? You and I talk a lot about certain subgroups of folks, athletes, high performers, but transition occurs in so many different seasons of our life that it is 100% worth chopping it up. It's a topic for me that is very, very close to the vest because of the work I do, but also it's provided insights into my life personally that have been hugely beneficial to really be attentive to what's going on and why. So I'd love to do it, man.
Let's do that. All right. We'll get that figured out for round 3 with Johnny Martin, identity and transitions. We'll get that as soon as we can. But brother, man, to share this time with you, always a highlight of my life, certainly of my day and my week. So I appreciate you taking the time to connect, and always great catching up with you, brother.
Pleasure is mine, man. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Awesome. Love you, man.
Love you too, brother.